The Florida Department of Financial Services, under Section 627.4554 of the Florida Statute, the Florida Annuity Suitability Law amended in 2008, has announced new requirements involving suitability and replacements for fixed annuity sales to seniors. Seniors are defined as persons aged 65 or older. The new requirements, in other words forms, adopted on October 28th, go into effect on December 25th, 2009. Merry Christmas. Some points common to both forms. These forms apply to deferred and immediate, individual or group annuity transactions, and in some cases will be in addition to, not instead of, any other required Florida or company-specific suitability and replacement disclosure forms. In other words, the suitability and replacement disclosure forms you and your clients now complete will still have to be completed regardless of the client's age. Redundant in many ways, I know, but hopefully this will change as both the department and companies settle into this requirement. If the owner and annuitant are different, the forms are completed in the name of the owner. And if the owner is under age 65 and any of the annuitants are over age 65, then the owner is considered a senior consumer and the forms must be used. If the transaction occurs in Florida with a senior consumer resident of another state, the laws of Florida govern and the forms must be used. All questions must be completed. If the question does not apply, use not applicable or NA. If the client doesn't know the answer, enter unknown. And if the client refuses to divulge the information, enter unknown refused to no spaces. A copy of each form must be provided by the producer to the insurer within 10 days after the execution of the form and provided to the consumer no later than the date of the delivery of the contract. Make sure to keep copies of all your application paperwork, especially the suitability and replacement forms, and keep them for at least 5 years from the date of the transaction. Part of the new regulation requires periodic reviews of records to ensure compliance. If the transaction is reviewed by the department, is found not to be in compliance of the regulations, and the senior consumer is harmed, the transaction could be rescinded with refund of premiums paid or accumulated value, whichever is greater, and the producer subject to any applicable penalty under the Florida Insurance Code. For owners and annuitants under age 65, these forms are not required by the state. However, each company is incorporating these forms into their new business process differently. Make sure to give us a call for each company's specific requirements. In the case of the Suitability Questionnaire, this is an expansion of something that for the most part has already been required. This information is required for variable annuity sales, but the requirements can be met by the suitability requirements of the broker-dealer. Finally, there is nothing in the rule prohibiting an insurer from adapting the forms for its own use, subject to adhering to certain provisions and approval by the department. Some companies have adapted the form, while others have instituted the department-created forms. Expecting no wide variance by any insurer, we will go over the standard state versions to help familiarize you with these new requirements. Let's take a look at the Annuity Suitability Questionnaire and start with a couple of pointers. An Annuity Suitability Questionnaire is required for each owner. The Department Annuity Suitability Questionnaire indicates the applicant and joint applicant must sign, or at least initial and date each page of the form, with the exception of page 3, which must be signed. However, some companies require all 4 pages be signed. Rather than trying to keep straight which company requires what, it's a good idea to get full signatures and dates on all 4 pages, regardless of the company. In all cases, if the form is not submitted or submitted incorrectly, it will be returned to the producer and the policy is held until a correctly completed copy is submitted. We'll cover page 3 of the Annuity Suitability Questionnaire first. Page 3. The advantages and disadvantages of purchasing the proposed annuity are to be completed by the producer regardless of whether or not the applicant opts out of the suitability questionnaire. Advantages. Be specific. Answers may include issuer strength, liquidity options, guarantees, diversification, etc. Disadvantages. Be specific. Do not leave blank and do not answer with NA. Answers such as surrender charges, limited liquidity, no bailouts, etc. can be used. The basis for recommendation. Detail the net benefit of the advantages and the disadvantages. Again, be specific. Producer signs and dates using the calendar day the information is completed. Acknowledgement and signature section. The applicant checks only one and only if limited or no information is given. Remember, to answer refused unknown to any or all questions not answered. Applicant's signature is the owner's signature. Date is the calendar day the form is completed. If no joint applicant, enter NA for both signature and date. Do not leave blank. Keep in mind, company compliance departments will be monitoring these forms. Consistent use of the opt-out by a producer will raise a red flag and could result in the declination of that producer's business. For the sake of this presentation, we'll assume the senior consumer prefers to complete the Annuity Suitability Questionnaire. Now we'll go to page 1.